Galactic High School was an enormous floating structure in deep space, home to alien species from across the galaxy. Every corner of the campus buzzed with life forms of all shapes and sizes, each race unique. Towering reptilians with armored scales mingled with telepathic insects whose whispers echoed through minds. Some beings flickered with energy, others glided on tendrils of light. Despite the alien diversity, there was something familiar about the social dynamics. Competition thrived, and a hierarchy had formed. The strong ruled, the weak fell behind. It was a place driven by survival of the fittest. Into this world stepped John. He was the first human to attend the school in centuries, a curiosity among the other students. Physically, he was unimpressive, average height, slim build, with no special powers or remarkable features. Dressed in his simple earth clothes, he seemed completely out of place among the towering aliens. But there was something about the way he carried himself. He wasn't nervous or intimidated, not like the other weaker species. He walked calmly through the crowded halls, unaware of the stares, the whispers, and the judgments being passed on him. Most aliens saw John as fragile, like most humans. Earth had long been considered a backwater, a world populated by weaklings with no significant power. Zarek, the leader of a group of notorious bullies, couldn't stand the sight of John. Zarek was a massive reptilian, covered in thick, green scales and towering over most of the student body. He thrived on intimidation and strength, and he wasn't about to let some weak human walk through the halls without showing him his place. Zarek approached John during a break between classes, flanked by his gang of thugs, each from different species but all known for their strength or brutality. John didn't seem to notice as they surrounded him. Zarek stepped in front of John, blocking his path, his eyes narrowing. "Hey, human!" Zarek growled, his voice deep and menacing. The other students stopped to watch, knowing what was about to happen. Zarek raised one massive hand and gave John a light shove, expecting him to stumble, or at least look afraid. John barely moved. He stood firm, offering Zarek a smile. "Hey, how's it going?" John's tone was friendly, completely oblivious to the threat in front of him. There was a pause. The other aliens watching were dumbfounded. Zarek blinked, confused for a moment. He hadn't expected this. Normally, his size alone was enough to make others cower. He regained his composure quickly, sneering down at John, but John didn't seem to notice the sneer at all. The situation was awkward, but Zarek didn't push it further, for now. He backed off, but the gears in his mind were already turning. John had embarrassed him, even if unknowingly. And that wouldn't stand. In the following days, the group's harassment grew. They tried verbal taunts, speaking in their alien tongues, throwing insults and jeers at John. But John, not understanding the languages, simply smiled back, assuming they were greeting him. His responses, polite and cheerful, confused and frustrated the bullies even more. They escalated to physical harassment. One of the group tripped John in the hallway, expecting to see him sprawled on the floor. But John's reflexes were quick. He stumbled for a moment, then caught himself, smiling at the alien who had tripped him. "Careful there, almost got me," he said, completely missing the malicious intent. Zarek's frustration grew. No matter what they did, John didn't react the way they expected. He didn't get angry, he didn't lash out, and most importantly, he didn't seem scared. Every shove, every insult, every trick was met with calm indifference, or a polite misunderstanding. What made it worse was that John's resilience wasn't born out of defiance. He simply didn't understand that he was being bullied. Zarek couldn't stand it. He had to break John. The casual, unbothered attitude grated on him. It wasn't just about dominance anymore. It was personal. The bullies upped the ante. They began targeting John more frequently, bumping into him in crowded hallways, throwing things at him during breaks. Each time, John brushed it off. He was never angry, never defensive. One day, during lunch, one of Zarek's crew knocked John's tray to the floor. The mess splattered everywhere, drawing laughter from the surrounding students. But John just looked down, chuckling softly. "Guess I'll have to get another one," he said, completely unfazed by the incident. He walked away to get a new tray, leaving the bullies staring after him, bewildered. To the aliens, John's behavior was incomprehensible. It was as though nothing they did could shake him. They were used to seeing their victims shrink back, their confidence shattered after a few days of harassment. But John? He was like a stone wall. Nothing seemed to penetrate. Zarek's anger only grew. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Humans were supposed to be weak, but John's unintentional defiance made Zarek feel powerless. It was clear that their simple bullying tactics wouldn't work. Something bigger would be needed to break him. Something that would finally show John, and everyone else, that humans had no place in the hierarchy of Galactic High School. Zarek and his gang couldn't take it anymore. John's constant indifference to their harassment was like a slap in the face. He never got angry, never fought back, and that infuriated them. They needed to find a way to humiliate him in front of everyone, something that would strip away his composure and show the whole school that humans were weak. The idea came during a physical education class, a perfect setting for a public spectacle. There would be a strength test, where various alien species would display their raw power. Zarek knew exactly how to make this John's downfall. They'd tamper with the equipment, setting John up for a failure he wouldn't walk away from easily. The gym buzzed with excitement as the test began. Massive aliens stepped forward, lifting weights that would crush smaller creatures. Zarek, full of arrogance, took his turn, grabbing a bar loaded with enormous weights. His muscles flexed under his scales as he hoisted it into the air, veins bulging with effort. The crowd cheered as he slammed the weights down, a smug look on his face. Zarek turned to glance at John, silently daring him to match his strength. Then it was John's turn. He approached the weights calmly, unaware of the sabotage. Zarek had added extra pressure to the machine, far more than even some of the stronger aliens could handle. The crowd murmured, waiting for John to falter. He gripped the bar and, with little thought, lifted. The entire gym froze. What should have been a monumental struggle for someone of John's size looked effortless. The weights rose smoothly in his hands. But then, with a quiet snap, the bar bent and broke under the force of John's grip. Metal crumpled in his hands as the weights collapsed to the ground. John blinked, surprised, looking down at the broken equipment, unsure of what had just happened. The gym was silent, save for the clattering metal. Shock rippled through the crowd as they processed what they had just seen. Zarek's mouth hung open, his confident smirk wiped away. His gang shifted nervously, clearly thrown off by this display of raw strength. They had assumed John was weak, like all humans. But what they saw defied everything they believed. John hadn't just lifted the weight, he had destroyed it without even realizing. John glanced around, confused by the stunned expressions on the faces of the other students. To him, it was just a simple exercise. He didn't understand why everyone was so silent. But then, slowly, it started to click. The bullying, the constant tripping, the sneers, all those little interactions he'd brushed off as misunderstandings. They weren't friendly at all. John had assumed it was some kind of alien quirk, a difference in culture. But now, as he looked at Zarek's furious face, it dawned on him. They hadn't been friendly at all. They'd been trying to break him. The realization settled in his mind. John could see the fear creeping into Zarek's eyes, the intimidation that had once belonged to the bullies now radiating off of him. The other students began whispering, exchanging glances. John had just lifted something that should have been impossible for someone like him. The bullies took a step back, unsure of what to do. They had underestimated him completely. His size, his calm demeanor, it had all fooled them. Humans, they realized, weren't as fragile as they had thought. John processed all of this in silence, his face remaining calm. He could feel the weight of the situation now. He'd been bullied. He hadn't realized it before, but now it was clear. They had seen his kindness, his patience, and mistaken it for weakness. But even now, as the truth set in, John didn't feel anger. There was no rage boiling beneath the surface, no desire to lash out. Instead, he felt a quiet sense of understanding. He knew now that the alien students saw him as less, but he also knew that their view was wrong. John walked away from the shattered weights, still calm, still composed. He didn't need to prove anything, not anymore. The aliens had seen what he was capable of, and that was enough. But if they pushed him again, if they tried to test him further, John was ready to show them exactly how strong humans could be. Zarek was desperate. The gym incident had humiliated him in front of the entire school, and he could feel his reputation crumbling. He couldn't let it end like this, with everyone whispering about how the human had effortlessly shown him up. He needed a decisive victory, something that would restore his dominance and erase the memory of his defeat. His mind raced, and soon, he came up with the only solution he thought would work: a public duel. Among alien species, duels were an ancient tradition, a way to settle disputes with honor. It was a test of endurance, strength, and cunning, something Zarek felt certain he could win. John might have embarrassed him in the gym, but that had been a fluke. In a formal setting, where the rules of combat were clear, Zarek was sure his superior strength and agility would overwhelm the human. He issued the challenge publicly, making sure everyone knew. There was no backing down now. John didn't fully understand what the duel entailed, but he agreed nonetheless. He saw it as an opportunity to put an end to this conflict once and for all. He didn't crave the fight, but if this was the only way to stop the bullying, so be it. The school's arena was packed, aliens of all shapes and sizes gathered to watch. Some came to see John fail, but after the gym incident, there were others who quietly hoped to see him succeed. The tension in the air was palpable as the duel was broadcasted across the school. Zarek wasted no time. As soon as the duel began, he charged at John with everything he had, his massive frame a blur of muscle and scales. His strength and speed were impressive, and for any other opponent, it would have been overwhelming. But John was calm. He moved with precision, sidestepping Zarek's first rush. The aliens watching gasped, surprised by John's agility. Zarek growled and came at him again, swinging his fists in wide arcs, hoping to land a devastating blow. But every time Zarek attacked, John either dodged or absorbed the hit with ease. It was as if Zarek's strength didn't affect him. The frustration on Zarek's face grew with each passing moment, his anger boiling over as he struggled to land a meaningful strike. John remained unbothered, his movements deliberate, never rushing or reacting in fear. Zarek's relentless assault started to lose steam as his stamina dwindled. Then came the final blow. Zarek, his face twisted in fury, aimed a massive punch right at John's head. The crowd leaned forward, expecting this to be the moment where Zarek would finally turn the tide. But John didn't flinch. His hand shot up, catching Zarek's punch in midair. The impact stopped cold, the force of Zarek's power absorbed effortlessly by John's grip. A stunned silence fell over the arena. With quiet strength, John didn't retaliate in anger. Instead, he gently pushed Zarek back. The push seemed light, but it sent Zarek stumbling backward, crashing to the ground in a heap. The once dominant bully was laid out before everyone, defeated not by violence or rage, but by the calm, controlled power of the human he had underestimated. The crowd erupted in shock, gasps and murmurs filling the air as Zarek's humiliation was complete. Zarek's gang, watching from the sidelines, looked on in disbelief. Their leader had just been bested, not by aggression, but by a human sheer control and restraint. They realized, with growing regret, that they had misjudged John from the start. They had thought him weak, fragile, an easy target. But now, they saw the truth. Humans weren't just physically capable, they had a strength that came from within, a quiet resilience that allowed them to face any challenge without being consumed by it. As Zarek picked himself up off the ground, his face was a mix of humiliation and regret. He understood now that his arrogance had led him to this point. He had let his prejudice blind him to John's true power, and now the whole school had seen his defeat. His gang, equally regretful, slunk back, unsure of how to process what had just happened. They wouldn't be challenging John again. They had learned their lesson the hard way. John stood in the center of the arena, his expression calm, his heart steady. He hadn't wanted to fight, but now that it was over, he felt no satisfaction in Zarek's defeat. This wasn't about proving himself superior, it was about ending the needless conflict. He didn't feel anger toward Zarek or the other bullies, just relief that it was over. He walked away from the arena quietly, not seeking praise or attention, just glad that the harassment would finally stop. The rest of the school now viewed John with a newfound respect. He had proven that humans, though often underestimated, possessed a strength that went beyond mere physicality. It was their resilience, their calm under pressure, and their ability to remain true to themselves that made them truly formidable. Zarek and his gang had learned that the hard way, and they wouldn't be underestimating John, or any other human, again. John continued his school life as before, still the same calm, collected figure he had always been. But now, he walked through the halls unbothered, quietly proud, knowing that he had earned the respect of his peers not through violence, but by showing them the true strength of humanity.